The morning sky above New York burned with colors that should not exist. Sarah Chun watched from the command bunker's reinforced windows as massive shapes descended through the clouds. The alien ships were beautiful in their own terrible way, like dark crystals carved by gods who had forgotten mercy. "General, we're getting the same reports from every major city," Lieutenant Rodriguez said, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "London, Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing. They're hitting everything at once." Sarah nodded, her jaw set. At 42, she had spent 20 years climbing the ranks of the military, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. First contact with alien life, and it came with weapons blazing. The first energy blast struck Manhattan with the force of a nuclear bomb, but cleaner. Buildings simply vanished, turned to dust and vapor. The electromagnetic pulse that followed killed every electronic device for miles, plunging the city into darkness. "How many ships?" Sarah asked. "At least 50 over North America alone. Intelligence suggests hundreds worldwide." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, they burned with cold determination. "Send word to all remaining military installations. We go underground. Full dispersal protocol." The Zilithian Empire had made their first mistake. They thought one massive show of force would break human spirit. They were wrong. Admiral Kex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the primitive planet's major population centers burn. The conquest was proceeding exactly as planned. These humans would surrender within days, maybe hours. They always did. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender broadcasts from several human governments." Kext's reptilian features arranged themselves into what passed for satisfaction among his species. "Excellent. Begin landing operations. Secure the major population centers and prepare the planet for resource extraction." But not all humans were surrendering. In hidden bunkers carved deep into mountains, old subway tunnels, and abandoned mines, Sarah Chun was building something the Zilithians had never encountered before: a global resistance network. The key is their technology. Sarah explained to the assembled leaders of what was left of Earth's military. The meeting was happening in an old Cold War bunker in Colorado, its walls lined with maps and hastily installed communication equipment. "They're advanced, yes, but they're not gods. Every weapon they use follows physical laws we can understand." Colonel Martinez leaned forward. "General, with respect, how can we fight ships that can vaporize cities?" Sarah smiled grimly. "The same way ants fight boots, Colonel. We adapt." The first Zilithian ground forces landed expecting broken cities full of terrified survivors. Instead, they found ghost towns and ambush sites. Human soldiers, using weapons cobbled together from salvaged alien technology, struck fast and disappeared into networks of tunnels and hidden bunkers. The aliens had superior firepower, but humans had something else. They learned fast. Every piece of Zilithian equipment that could be captured was studied, taken apart, and understood. Human engineers worked around the clock, their minds racing to comprehend technology centuries ahead of their own. They couldn't build starships yet, but they could make the aliens' own weapons turn against them. Sarah stood in what had once been a university physics lab, now hidden 3 levels underground. Dr. Peterson, formerly a professor of quantum mechanics, now humanity's leading expert on alien technology, was explaining his latest discovery. "Their energy weapons use a focused plasma discharge," Peterson said, pointing to the dismantled Zilithian rifle on his workbench. "The power source is incredibly compact, but the focusing mechanism is actually quite simple. We can't replicate the power source yet, but we can modify the focusing array." "To do what?" Sarah asked. Peterson's smile was savage. "To overload. Turn their weapons into grenades with a timer." The war changed overnight. Zilithian patrols began finding their own weapons scattered around human settlements. When they picked them up, the modified focusing arrays would detonate, taking the unfortunate alien with them. But Sarah was thinking bigger than booby traps. "We need to take one of their ships," she announced to her staff. "A small one, something we can study and eventually fly ourselves." "General, that's impossible," Major Kim protested. "Their landing craft are heavily defended. Then we make them come to us." The trap was set in the ruins of Chicago. Sarah's people leaked false intelligence through captured Zilithian communication devices, suggesting that a large group of human leaders was hiding in the old subway system. The bait was too tempting for the aliens to ignore. A single Zilithian scout ship landed in what had once been Grant Park. 20 alien soldiers emerged, moving in formation toward the subway entrance. They never saw the explosives hidden in the rubble, or the human soldiers waiting in buildings that looked destroyed but were actually carefully prepared sniper nests. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, Sarah stood on the ramp of humanity's first captured alien spacecraft, her hands bloody but her eyes bright with possibility. "Rodriguez," she called to her communications officer. "Send a message to all resistance cells worldwide. We're no longer just fighting for survival. We're fighting to take this war to them." Inside the captured ship, human technicians were already at work, their minds racing to understand the alien technology. The ship's computer contained star charts, tactical information, and most importantly, the locations of Zilithian bases throughout the solar system. Sarah looked at the data streaming across the ship's displays and felt something she hadn't felt since the invasion began: hope. But it was a cold hope, tempered with steel and sharp with the promise of vengeance. The Zilithians had expected to find a primitive species that would bow before superior technology. Instead, they had awakened something that would haunt them across the galaxy. They had given humans the greatest gift possible: an enemy to unite against and the motivation to reach for the star's dot in the depths of the captured ship. Sarah began planning humanity's next move. The aliens thought they had won by striking first. They would learn soon enough that hitting Earth first had been their greatest mistake. 6 months after the first attack, Admiral Kext stood in his command center staring at reports he could barely believe. What should have been a simple occupation had become a nightmare. The humans refused to stay down. "Explain this to me again," he growled at his intelligence officer. "How have we lost 12 patrol ships in the last month?" The younger Zilithian scales rippled with nervous energy. "The humans, sir. They've learned to use our own weapons against us. Yesterday's attack on Outpost 7 used modified plasma charges that our engineers confirm came from our own supply depot." Kext's claws dug into the metal armrest of his chair. "These primitives are stealing our weapons?" "It's worse than that, sir. They're improving them." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Sarah Chun walked through what had once been a natural cave system and was now humanity's largest underground military base. The walls buzzed with activity as soldiers, scientists, and engineers worked side by side in spaces carved from living rock. "General, the morning reports." Rodriguez handed her a tablet as she entered the command center. Sarah had aged years in the past months, but her eyes still burned with the same fierce determination. She reviewed the data with satisfaction. 3 more Zilithian supply convoys hit. 2 forward bases destroyed. 1 communications relay captured intact, along with its encryption codes. The humans were learning to fight a very different kind of war. "Where's Dr. Peterson?" Sarah asked. "Lab 7, ma'am. He says he has something important to show you." Sarah made her way through corridors that had been carved by mining, equipment salvaged from abandoned sites across the country. The underground city now housed nearly 10,000 people, all working toward one goal: making the aliens regret they had ever heard of Earth. Dr. Peterson looked up as Sarah entered his lab. his face bright with excitement. The former professor had become something of a legend among the resistance. His ability to understand and modify alien technology had saved countless lives. "General, look at this." He gestured to a device on his workbench that looked like a cross between a Zilithian communicator and human computer parts. "I've been working on their communication systems. Did you know they use quantum entanglement for instant communication across star systems?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Can we intercept their messages?" "Better. We can send false ones." Peterson's grin was predatory. "I've broken their encryption. We can make their own command structure work against them." This was exactly what Sarah had been waiting for. "Show me." The false orders went out that evening, transmitted through hijacked Zilithian communication networks. Admiral Kext received what appeared to be urgent commands from his superiors, ordering him to withdraw forces from Australia and redeploy them to defend a mining operation in the asteroid belt that the humans were supposedly planning to attack. The mining operation didn't exist. Sarah had invented it entirely, while half the Zilithian forces in the Pacific rushed off to defend empty space. Human resistance cells struck every major alien installation on the Australian continent. By morning, the entire continent was back under human control. "How are they doing this?" Admiral Kext demanded, his composure finally cracking. "Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs." His tactical officer pulled up a holographic display showing human attack patterns. "Sir, they're not trying to match our technology. They're using our own advantages against us. When we concentrate forces to defend one area, they hit everywhere else. When we spread out to cover more ground, they mass their forces and overwhelm our smaller units. They're learning from us," another officer added reluctantly. "Every tactical manual in our database, every strategic principle we follow, they figured it out and developed countermeasures." Kext studied the display with growing dread. The red dots showing human-controlled territory were spreading like a plague. Across the planet's surface, Sarah stood in the ruins of what had once been Sydney's Opera House, now converted into a forward command post. Around her, human soldiers were setting up communication equipment using a mixture of salvaged Earth technology and captured alien devices. "General," Major Kim approached with a status report. "We've secured the entire continent. The Zilithian forces retreated to their orbital platforms." "Good." Sarah looked up at the sky where alien ships still circled like vultures. "How many of their craft did we capture intact?" 17, ma'am. Engineering teams are studying them now." Sarah nodded. The captured ships were the key to her larger plan. Humans were already learning to fly them, to understand their systems. Soon, very soon, the war would leave Earth's surface entirely. But for now, she had a different message to send. "Set up a broadcast array," she ordered. "Wide spectrum transmission. I want every Zilithian in the system to hear this." The message went out an hour later, transmitted on frequencies that would reach every alien ship in Earth's solar system. Sarah's voice was clear and cold as space itself. "This is General Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Coalition. 6 months ago, you came to our world expecting easy conquest. You found something else entirely. Every day you remain in our system, we grow stronger. Every battle teaches us more about how you think, how you fight, and how you die." She paused, letting the words sink in. "You have a choice. Leave now and never return, and we might be satisfied with driving you from Earth. Stay, and we'll show you why hitting Earth first was the worst mistake your empire ever made." The transmission ended in silence, aboard his flagship. Admiral Kext listened to the human's words with something approaching fear. In 6 months, these primitives had gone from helpless victims to a genuine threat. What would they become in a year? In 5 years? He reached for his communications array to contact the Imperial High Command. This was no longer a simple occupation. This was a war, and the humans were winning. Deep in her mountain fortress, Sarah Chun was already planning the next phase. The underground war had taught her people everything they needed to know about their enemy. Now it was time to take the fight beyond Earth's atmosphere. The Zilithian Empire had given humanity the stars as enemies. Soon, they would give them the stars as conquest. The war was just beginning. Sarah Chung floated in the pilot's seat of the captured Zilithian scout ship, her hands steady on controls that had been designed for clawed fingers. 3 months of intensive training had taught her and 50 other humans how to fly the alien craft. But this would be their first real test. "General, we're approaching the target," Lieutenant Torres reported from the navigation station. Outside the ship's transparent hull, the massive Zilithian command station grew larger, its dark metal surface bristling with weapons and communication arrays. Sarah studied the structure that had coordinated the destruction of her world for nearly a year. Today, it would become humanity's first victory in space. "All ships. Report status," she said into her communicator. "Strike Team 2 ready," came Colonel Martinez's voice from another captured ship. "Strike Team 3 in position," Major Kim confirmed. 12 stolen. Zilithian vessels hung in space around the command station, invisible to its sensors because they broadcast the correct identification codes. The aliens never suspected that their own ships could be turned against them. "Remember the plan," Sarah said calmly. "We're not just here to destroy this station. We're here to send a message that will reach every corner of their empire." The attack began at exactly 0800 hours. Human-piloted ships opened fire on the station's weapon systems while boarding pods launched from concealed positions. Sarah led the assault personally, her pods slamming into the station's command section with bone-jarring force. The Zilithians inside had no time to react. Human soldiers poured through the breach, moving with deadly efficiency. They had studied alien tactics for months, learning every weakness in their defensive procedures. Sarah fought her way to the command center. Her weapon, a modified Zilithian rifle that fired twice as fast as the original design. The aliens she encountered moved too slowly, thought too rigidly. They had never faced an enemy that adapted as quickly as humans did. The station's commander, a massive Zilithian with scarred scales, tried to activate the self-destruct sequence. Sarah shot him before his claws reached the controls. "Torres, get their communication system online," she ordered as her team secured the command center. "I want a broadcast on every frequency they use." It took 20 minutes to crack the alien encryption codes and access their communication network. When the system finally activated, Sarah found herself connected to hundreds of Zilithian ships and outposts throughout the solar system. She leaned into the microphone, her voice carrying across space to reach thousands of alien ears. "This is General Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Coalition. I'm speaking to you from your own command station, which is now under human control." She paused, letting the implications sink in. 10 months ago, your empire made a decision. You chose to attack a world you thought was defenseless. You were wrong. On ships throughout the solar system, Zilithian officers listened in stunned silence. The human's voice was calm, almost conversational. But there was something underneath it that made their scales crawl with primitive fear. "You hit Earth first," Sarah continued, her words now burned into history. "Now we are coming for you." The transmission ended, but its effects rippled across the galaxy faster than light through the Empire's quantum communication network. Within hours, every Zilithian military commander from the outer colonies to the Imperial core worlds had heard the human general's warning. Admiral Keck stood in his ready room, staring at reports that confirmed his worst fears. The humans had captured Battle Station Nexus, the most heavily defended installation in the Sol system. More importantly, they had used its communication array to broadcast their declaration of war to the entire Empire. "Sir," his communications officer entered without being announced. Something that would have earned severe punishment under normal circumstances. "We're receiving emergency messages from High Command." Kext read the orders with growing despair. The Empire was recalling all forces from Earth immediately. The human threat was to be contained at all costs. "Sir, there's more," the officer continued hesitantly. "Intelligence reports that the humans have captured 17 of our ships. They're learning to operate our technology." Kext closed his eyes. 17 ships didn't sound like much, but in human hands, they represented something terrifying. Proof that these creatures could not only fight back, but could master alien technology with impossible speed. "Prepare for immediate departure," he ordered. "All ships, emergency withdrawal to the outer system." But Sarah Chun had no intention of letting them escape easily. From the captured command station, now rechristened Liberation 1 by its human crew, Sarah coordinated the largest military operation in human history. Every captured Zilithian ship was deployed in a carefully planned campaign to harass the retreating alien fleet. The humans didn't try to destroy the entire Zilithian force. They were too few and their captured ships too valuable to risk in direct confrontation. Instead, they struck like wolves, hitting isolated ships and supply convoys, capturing more technology with each successful raid. Every victory taught them more about their enemies. Every captured database revealed more about the Empire's structure, its weaknesses, and the locations of its worlds. "General," Dr. Peterson reported from his new laboratory aboard the captured station, "I've been analyzing their star charts. The Zilithian Empire controls over 3,000 worlds, but their military is spread thin. Most of their strength is focused on the core worlds." Sarah studied the holographic map of the galaxy with interest. Red dots showed Zilithian-controlled systems, while blue lines indicated major shipping routes and communication networks. "What about their colonies?" she asked. "Lightly defended. They rely on orbital platforms and small garrisons. The Empire never expected to face rebellion from conquered species." Sarah smiled grimly. "Then it's time to give them something new to worry about." The plan that emerged from weeks of careful study was audacious beyond anything humans had attempted before. Using captured ships and stolen navigation data, small human fleets would strike at isolated Zilithian colonies, freeing enslaved populations and gathering intelligence about the Empire's true strength. It was risky. If any of the human ships were captured, the aliens would learn everything about Earth's capabilities. But Sarah had learned something important about warfare. Sometimes the greatest risks brought the greatest rewards. "Come on, Martinez," she called as the final preparations were made. "You'll take Strike Fleet Alpha to the Kepler sector. Major Kim will lead Beta Fleet to the Vega colonies. I'll personally command Gamma Fleet." "Where are you going, General?" Martinez asked. Sarah looked at the star chart, her finger pointing to a system 20 light years away, where the Empire maintained a major slave processing center. "To keep a promise," she said simply. "We told them we were coming for them. Time to prove we meant it." The first human ships departed Liberation 1 that evening, their destination scattered across dozens of star systems. For the first time in history, humanity was taking war to the stars. The Zilithian Empire had awakened something terrible. They had taught a peaceful species that the universe was a battlefield. Now they would learn what humans could accomplish when they stopped playing defense and started hunting their enemies among the stars. The age of human expansion had begun. 2 years after Sarah Chun's warning echoed across the galaxy, the Zilithian Empire was crumbling from within. What had begun as humanity's desperate fight for survival had transformed into the largest military campaign the galaxy had ever seen. Sarah stood on the bridge of the ED's Vengeance, humanity's first purpose-built warship. Unlike the modified Zilithian vessels that had carried the first human fleets to the stars, Vengeance was designed from the ground up by human engineers who had learned to improve upon alien technology. "General, we're receiving reports from all fronts," Major Kim announced, her voice carrying across the bridge's communication systems. Kim had been promoted to Fleet Command after her successful liberation of the Vega colonies. Sarah reviewed the holographic display showing human operations across the galaxy. Green lights marked liberated worlds, while red indicators showed active combat zones. The map told a story of systematic victory. "The Rigel sector is secure," Kim continued. "Admiral Martinez reports the complete withdrawal of Zilithian forces from the entire region. He's requesting permission to advance on the Centauri colonies." "Granted," Sarah said without hesitation. "What about the Outer Rim territories?" "Admiral Torres has liberated 3 more slave worlds in the Orion Arm. The local populations are requesting to join the coalition." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. This was the part of the war that mattered most to her. Every world the humans liberated brought new allies, new resources, and new testimony to the Empire's cruelty. The Zilithians had conquered through fear and superior technology, but they had ruled through oppression, treating conquered species as nothing more than resources to be exploited. When humans arrived offering liberation instead of conquest, entire sectors rebelled against their former masters. On the bridge's main screen, a communication request flashed. Sarah accepted the transmission, and the scaled features of Admiral Kext appeared, looking far older than when she had first encountered him over Earth's burning skies. "General Chun," the alien commander said, his voice heavy with defeat. "I am authorized to discuss terms." Sarah studied her former enemy with cold eyes. Kext had been reassigned to the Empire's frontier defenses after his failure at Earth. Now he commanded what remained of the Zilithian Outer Fleet, a shadow of its former strength. "The only terms I'm interested in are unconditional surrender," Sarah replied. "You started this war by attacking innocent civilians. You'll end it by accepting the consequences." "You don't understand," Kext said desperately. "The Empire spans thousands of worlds. Even with your victories, you've barely touched our core systems. The High Command will never surrender." Sarah's smile was as cold as the vacuum between stars. "Then we'll change their minds." The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. 2 years of constant warfare had changed her from a defending general into something the galaxy had never seen. A human conqueror driven not by greed, but by justice. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with new intelligence reports. He had risen through the ranks alongside Sarah, becoming her most trusted aide. "We've intercepted Zilithian military communications. They're pulling forces from the outer colonies to defend their homeworld." "How many ships?" "At least 2,000. They're abandoning frontier territories entirely." Sarah studied this information with interest. The Empire was making the same mistake that had cost them Earth, concentrating their forces in one location while leaving everything else undefended. "Send orders to all fleet commanders," she decided. "Accelerate operations in the abandoned sectors. I want every former Zilithian colony liberated within 6 months." The campaign that followed became known as the Liberation War. Human fleets, now numbering in the hundreds of ships, swept across the galaxy like an unstoppable tide. But these weren't conquerors seeking to build an empire of their own. They were liberators, freeing enslaved populations and helping them rebuild their shattered civilizations. On the world of Kelran Prime, Sarah personally accepted the surrender of the last Zilithian garrison. The planet had been strip-mined for rare minerals, its native population reduced to slave labor in underground facilities. When human forces arrived, the Kelrani had wept to see their sky free of alien ships for the first time in 50 years. General Chun, the Kelrani leader, an elderly being whose species resembled Earth's dolphins but walked on powerful legs, approached her with reverence. "Our people wish to join your coalition. We offer our ships, our resources, and our eternal gratitude." "We don't want your resources," Sarah replied gently. "We want your freedom. That's what this war has always been about." But freedom came with a price. Intelligence reports from the Empire's core systems revealed that the Zilithian High Command was preparing for a final, desperate gambit. Rather than surrender, they planned to sacrifice their outer worlds and concentrate everything on defending their homeworld and the dozen richest systems around it. Dr. Peterson, now serving as the Coalition's chief technology officer, brought Sarah the most disturbing news during a strategy meeting aboard the Vengeance. "General, we've analyzed captured data from their military networks. The Zilithians are developing what they call a cleansing weapon. Based on our calculations, it's designed to sterilize entire planets." Sarah felt cold dread settle in her stomach. How many worlds could they target? "All of them, General. Every world the Coalition has liberated, every human colony, even Earth itself. They're planning to destroy everything they can't control." This changed everything. Sarah had been willing to fight a war of liberation, gradually wearing down the Empire until it collapsed. But she couldn't risk the lives of billions of innocent beings who had already suffered under Zilithian rule. How long until their weapon is operational? 6 months, maybe 8 if we're lucky. Sarah made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life, but what she knew was necessary. "Recall all fleets to the rally point at Proxima Station," she ordered. "Send word to every Coalition member species. We're ending this war now." The massive fleet that assembled over the next month was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 200 human warships formed the core, but they were joined by vessels from dozens of liberated species, all united under the Earth Defense Coalition banner. Sarah stood before the assembled fleet commanders in the Vengeance's main briefing room. Humans, Kelrani, vegan refugees, and representatives from 20 other species looked to her for leadership. "The Zilithian Empire has forced our hand," she began. "They're developing weapons of mass destruction that threaten every free world in the galaxy. We cannot allow them to complete this project." She activated the holographic display, showing the Empire's core systems protected by massive defensive networks. "This is no longer a war of liberation. This is a war of survival. The Empire's homeworld and its primary colonies must be neutralized before they can deploy their ultimate weapon." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were about to launch the largest military assault in galactic history. "General," Admiral Martinez spoke for them all, "the fleet is ready. When do we attack?" Sarah looked at the faces around her, seeing determination mixed with fear. These beings had all suffered under Zilithian rule. Now, they were about to risk everything to ensure that no one else would ever face that fate. "Tomorrow," she said simply, "we strike at dawn." The war that had begun over Earth's burning skies was about to reach its climax among the stars of the Empire's homeworld. Humanity had learned to fight among the stars, and now they would prove that even the mightiest Empire could fall when faced with the combined will of free peoples. The Zilithian High Command would soon discover that their greatest mistake hadn't been underestimating human strength. It had been teaching humans to hate. The Zilithian homeworld of Zelther hung in space like a jewel of dark metal and crystal spires. For 3,000 years, it had been the center of an empire that stretched across half the galaxy. Today, it would either surrender or burn. Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Ed's Vengeance, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history dropped out of hyperspace around the enemy world. 500 ships from dozens of species, all united under one banner. The Earth Defense Coalition. General. Admiral Martinez's voice crackled over the communication system from his flagship. All fleets report ready. The Zilithian Defense Fleet is moving to intercept. Sarah studied the tactical display with calm eyes. 2,000 enemy ships formed defensive lines around their homeworld, more military power than had ever been assembled in one place. It should have been an intimidating sight. Instead, she felt only cold determination. "Open a channel to the Zilithian High Command," she ordered. The massive form of Supreme Admiral Vexter appeared on the main screen, his ancient scales bearing the scars of countless battles. He was the ultimate ruler of the Zilithian military, answering only to the Emperor himself. "So the human pest finally comes to die at our homeworld," Vexter growled, his voice carrying the weight of imperial authority. "You have traveled far from your primitive world only to witness the true power of the Empire." Sarah's expression remained unchanged. "I'm here to offer you the same choice your forces gave Earth 3 years ago. Surrender now, and your people will be treated fairly. Resist, and face the consequences." Vexter's laugh was like grinding stone. "Foolish creature. You command 500 ships against 2,000. Even with your stolen technology, you cannot hope to victory." "You're right," Sarah admitted. "We can't hope for victory. We can guarantee it." The communication ended, and Sarah turned to her tactical officer. "Execute Order Omega." What happened next would be debated by military historians for centuries. The Coalition fleet didn't charge straight at the Zilithian lines as expected. Instead, they scattered into small groups, each unit targeting specific points in the enemy formation. The humans had learned something important during their 3 years of warfare. Superior numbers meant nothing if your enemy could think faster than you could react. The first wave of human ships struck like surgical knives, targeting not the enemy vessels, but the communication relays that coordinated their defense. Within minutes, the massive Zilithian fleet found itself blind and unable to coordinate. "All units, engage at will," Sarah commanded, and the real battle began. The space around Zelther became a maze of energy beams and exploding ships. But this wasn't the chaotic melee that Vexter had expected. Every human attack was carefully coordinated, designed to maximize damage while minimizing risk. Dr. Peterson's technological innovations proved their worth as Coalition ships used modified Zilithian weapons that were twice as powerful as the originals. Ships that had been designed by human engineers specifically for this battle deployed new tactics that the Empire had never encountered. Most importantly, the Coalition fought as a true alliance. Kalrani ships provided electronic warfare support, while vegan vessels used their superior speed for hit-and-run attacks. Human ships coordinated everything. Their crews trained to think and react faster than any previous military force in the galaxy. Admiral Kext, commanding one of the Zilithian defense fleets, watched in horror as his formation was torn apart by enemies who seemed to anticipate his every move. These were no longer the desperate survivors he had faced over Earth. They had become something new and terrifying. A military force that learned from every mistake and never made the same error twice. "All ships, fall back to planetary defense grid," he ordered, but it was too late. Half his fleet was already destroyed or disabled. On the surface of Zelther, in the crystal spires of the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zekrath watched his invincible navy crumble before the human assault. For the first time in 3 millennia, enemy ships were penetrating his homeworld's defenses. "My Emperor," his military advisor approached with trembling claws. "Supreme Admiral Vexter requests permission to deploy the cleansing weapon against the human homeworld." "Do it," Zekrath snarled. "If we cannot win this battle, we will at least have revenge." But Sarah had anticipated this moment. As Zilithian ships moved to target Earth with their planet-killing weapon, Coalition forces that had been held in reserve struck with devastating precision. The weapon platform, a massive space station that had taken years to build, was destroyed in minutes by human ships that had been specifically designed for this one mission. General, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported with barely concealed excitement. The enemy superweapon has been neutralized. Zilithian fleet strength is down to 40% and falling. Sarah nodded, but her attention was focused on something else. The personal communication request flashing on her screen. Emperor Zekrith himself wanted to speak with her. The Zilithian ruler appeared on the main display, his magnificent robes unable to hide the defeat in his ancient eyes. "General Chun," he said with the formal dignity of a dying empire, "I am prepared to discuss terms." "The terms are simple," Sarah replied. "Complete and unconditional surrender. Dissolution of the Empire's military forces. Reparations to every species you enslaved. And a guarantee that Zilithians will never again wage war against innocent populations." Zekrith's scales rippled with rage. "You ask us to abandon everything we are. The Empire has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. And in 3 years, humans have shown the galaxy that empires built on oppression always fall." Sarah's voice was implacable. "You taught us that the universe is a battlefield. Thank you for the lesson." The Emperor stared at her for a long moment, seeing something in her eyes that made his ancient soul tremble. This human spoke with the voice of inevitable justice. "I accept your terms," he said finally. The surrender of the Zilithian Empire was formalized 3 days later aboard the Coalition flagship. Sarah stood in the ship's main conference room as Emperor Zekrith, signed documents that would reshape the galaxy. But for Sarah, the most important moment came when she addressed the people of Earth via quantum transmission. "Citizens of Earth," she began, her voice carrying across space to reach the world that had given birth to humanity's greatest adventure. 3 years ago, aliens attacked our world expecting easy conquest. Instead, they found something that would carry the ideals of freedom to every corner of the galaxy. She paused, looking out at stars that now belonged to free peoples. Today, the war is over. The Zilithian Empire has surrendered. But our work is not finished. We have learned to fight among the stars, and now we must learn to build among them. The galaxy needs protectors, not conquerors. It needs beings who will stand against oppression wherever it rises." The transmission ended, but Sarah's work continued. In the months that followed, the Earth Defense Coalition transformed from a military alliance into something unprecedented. A galactic confederation dedicated to protecting the freedom of all sentient beings. Former Zilithian worlds joined willingly, their populations grateful to be free of imperial rule. The galaxy's greatest empire had become its greatest democracy, guided by principles learned in the crucible of Earth's desperate struggle for survival. Sarah Chun, the general who had begun the war by defending a single world, ended it as the first president of the Galactic Coalition. But she never forgot the lesson that the Zilithians had taught humanity. The universe could be a dangerous place, full of predators who would prey on the weak. That was why the galaxy needed humanity, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The species that had learned to fight for freedom would spend the rest of eternity ensuring that freedom survived among the stars. In the end, the Zilithian Empire's greatest mistake had not been attacking Earth first. It had been showing humanity what they were capable of becoming when they had something worth fighting for. And now, the entire galaxy was worth fighting for.